Hi guys, welcome to Vintage on Tap. My name is Bianca. If you're a brand new visitor to the channel, I make sewing videos and I show you guys the behind the scenes process of sewing. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. So this is a video that's continuing my series on Vintage Vogue V9280, which is a beautiful coat dress. If you haven't already seen the intro video, please go ahead and check that out before watching this one. In this particular video though, we're going to be diving into the fitting process. Now, as I say in the intro, I'm going to be showing how to fit this dress to my body. If you have different proportions and measurements than myself, that's totally okay. I still recommend watching the video though, just because it kind of gives you a point of view, of like a reference point of some of the changes that you may have to do. So, you know, granted, you may have to do changes that are completely different than mine, and even the changes that I make might be, I might do them differently than you do if you have to do similar adjustments. But the thing is, you know, you want to be able to kind of get like a more holistic point of view of, you know, how people approach it. I might do my fitting video than somebody else, their fitting video might be different. So, you know, the more points of view, the more perspectives you can to get on this piece, the better. I mean, at least that's the way I always learn. Before beginning the process though, I would recommend cutting off the skirt portion of the bodice just because it is a long dress. And so I cut mine off at the hip line, which I did not do in the meat of this video, but I cut my bodice top at the hip line, and then from there I went ahead and got started. So let's go ahead and go through the process. So first things first, make the muslin straight from the pattern. In my case, you can see that it is very long on me and it does not go to my center front, though I also see that I have to do a sway back in the back. So that was the first thing I took care of, was I went ahead and started on the back piece. Now, you know, I used the lines that were already drawn on the pattern. I didn't adjust the placement of those. So I went ahead and actually took up about 3/4 of an inch in the length so that the waist would actually fit me in the correct place. Now, of course, if you've seen any of my other previous videos, you know that I use a bunch of tape. So make sure to tape that down all the way so it doesn't wiggle as you're working. But in terms of shortening it or lengthening it, just be sure to get your correct measurements right off the bat. If you do have to adjust where the waistline sits on like a particular piece, sort that out later, because you just want to make sure that you have a baseline guide from the very beginning. Now I went ahead and did that over everything. And as I said in the intro, I'm working on just the bodice pieces. I cut off these skirt pieces at the hip line just so that I can kind of get a more easy, accurate gauge as I move things around. Cool. After going ahead and shortening everything, went ahead and worked on my sway back adjustment. Now, in my case, I did a sway back adjustment of about 1/2 inch, which is pretty standard for me for all my McCall's Pattern Company pieces. So you want to go ahead, if you've done a sway back before, you're going to do a little hinge at the side seam. And then you're going to be cutting in from the center back to the hinge, overlap slightly. In my case, as I said, is 1/2 inch. Tape everything securely once it's all overlapped. Cool. As you can see here, I'm going to head and just tape up a piece down the center back, because you have to imagine that when you do the sway back adjustment, you are shortening the center back line and it might get a little bit crooked. So I went ahead and straightened it out, put down my ruler and cut out a new center back. And this particular piece, because there is that inverted pleat, there's this like notch, so just make sure to keep that intact. Now for this muslin, you can see that the waist is great. My sway back is looking good, so my center back line is looking decent. I do have a sock at my shoulder to make sure that I can see how much I actually need to measure out for my full bust adjustment. Now in this part, I'm kind of motioning to the notches, because that's essentially where I need to make sure that those notches stay in place. Now, If you're doing a full bust adjustment on a princess seam like I'm doing here, definitely check out a previous video that I did. I'm gonna go ahead and link that in the description, just so you can see another example of a full bust adjustment on a princess seam. In my case though, I am just going to be doing the full bust adjustment on the center front piece, not the side front piece. Now the reason being is that the bust point hits me in the correct spot from when I tried it on. And so I figured, you know, like I only really need to add, I only need to really add to the front piece, not the side. The side looks good. So in my particular case, I went ahead and did my slash and spread for the front. Then I went ahead and added a 2-inch distance there. So I'm here adding more paper to stabilize that front piece, and measuring out the 2 inches that I needed to add. Also, you know, in order to be able to make sure that your pieces stay intact and the integrity of the shape is kept in place, you want to make sure to do a little hinge on that front piece, and you'll see here as I spread that out that hinge opens up to accommodate the 2 inches. And more paper and more tape. So if you're working on something like this and you have big old scraps of paper, make sure to just keep those as you work. And that little scrap under there to close off that hinge. And you can go ahead and pull out your French curve and go ahead and true off that seam and cut that out. Same thing for the top, just make sure everything is trued off correctly. Well, in my case, you can see all the different scraps of paper. Tape those down. Now for the bottom piece, you have to keep in mind that for this last piece here at the bottom, I'm gonna go ahead and tape some more paper down below. I'm going to draw a line across the bottom, and then I'm going to remove the center front piece, cut that out separately, and move it down the pattern piece. Now the reason you want to do this is because in this particular piece, that center front little corner is it's got its own little unique angle, its own little unique shape, and you don't want to lose that by just tracing a straight line down the paper. There is like a slight curve to it, so I went ahead and just taped it down and cut that out with a, you know, as like a complete piece rather than just moving a line down that wasn't going to be the right shape. Now at this point, if you've seen any of my other fitting videos, you know that I am all about making sure that your pattern pieces line up the way they're supposed to. So in this case, I'm setting everything up to start walking my seams along that princess seam. And so here I am drawing in my 5/8 seam allowance on the where those two pattern pieces are going to meet up. And then I'm also clearly marking my notches in Sharpie. So you have to remember those notches do need to line up to make sure that everything matches. Now, if you don't know how to walk your seams and stuff, I do have a video about that that kind of goes more into depth about why it's important, why these things are important to double check, and just kind of extra tips in terms of lengthening or shortening pieces if they don't match, like what to do if these pieces don't match and like if the notches don't match up. So definitely check that out. I'll link that down below. But I can see in my case that everything matches up like it's supposed to. And you can go ahead and try it on. In my case, looks good. I've got socks underneath my shoulders. If I pull the skirt down here in the back, you can see that the back looks pretty good, and you're good to go. hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned a lot from it. Definitely leave any questions you have down below in the comments section. I always read every comment and I try to answer all of them as best I can. Don't forget that I do have a giveaway going on for this particular pattern, so please check out my website, link in the description, if you'd like to enter for one of two patterns of giving away the bigger size and the smaller size. I'm also doing like a sewing compendium. Thank you to everyone who's already signed up. You should be receiving the next email on that email sequence that's going to be talking about additional fitting tips. So if you're like taller than me, or if you have a smaller bust, that sort of thing, I'll go ahead and be sending an email about that as well. So anyway, the next video is actually going to be a technique video showing you something very specific about this particular pattern, something that you can try before you tackle it. But with that said, like, subscribe, all the places, all the stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.